We are recording. Okay, so here we are on the very important topic of eligibility. All of our individuals to receive services must be eligible, and there's milestones. And so many of you would have had your individual become eligible at the age of 6 and receive services through the age of 15, and then at 16, we need to have another assessment done. So at 6 years old, it's the children's assessment that's done. And then the OEDI, which is the adult version, the Ohio Eligibility Determination Instrument, I believe it is done at 16 years old. And that's a really critical milestone for all of our transition age youth, is that we hit that mark. We have another assessment done with Dottie Croyle and continue eligibility, because then you can tap into our great services and other things like recreation, the FSS funding, those kinds of things. So we want to become eligible, cover these criteria. The impairment is a developmental impairment, and it has happened prior to the age of 22. It's likely to continue, and you must be a resident of Lake County, of course, to tap into Lake County services. So in order to determine this eligibility, when that time rolls around, this is kind of our mantra. You're going to need to have a verification of that qualifying diagnosis, and that's going to be from a medical professional, likely within 1 year. If you have guardianship or custodial parents, we're going to need to see those documents. And custodial parents would be if a family has split because of a divorce or something like that. We just need documentation that you are actually the parent of that individual. Verification of date of birth, social security number, so that's the card, birth certificate, those kinds of things. We need insurance cards. And then the timelines have changed recently. If Dottie was here, she would explain that to get this process started, we would tell you we need all these things, and then we would have you sign a bunch of releases, and then we'd go out and beat the streets and try to get all this information for you. We have shifted gears and are modeling after what most counties in the state are doing, and asking you to provide this documentation just like you would for Social Security or Medicaid or anything like that. Any of those other agencies are requiring you to pull that documentation and provide it. We do have a transition services statement that we use with our school staff. So again, these are all kids that are attending school, and your school staff has a good idea who is likely a good candidate to be eligible for DD services. And so we have this statement that can be signed by you along with a release of information, and then the school district is able to provide the current ETR and IEP to us. When we're talking about 18-year-olds that potentially are their own guardians because you haven't taken guardianship, they are the ones that need to sign those documents for us. And then we can have the current ETR IEP, and that kind of opens up the case, and that's how Dottie begins her process. Okay, this is just what that form looks like, and we use this as a good communication system with school district staff. Okay, this might be Nicole. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to pass it on to Nicole.
So we all know the process of the IEP, as we've all been involved in many different ways, but the process looks a little bit different starting at age 14. That's when transition planning starts to play a big role in our young adults. And the transition plan includes different areas, including independent living, education and training, and employment. So that's the focus moving on as young adults, and helping support those goals and future plans for after school. And as we all know, all of our students and individuals that we work with are all very different. So transition plans are meant to be specific for the individual. They are very different, including the activities and the different type of services that will be introduced for each individual. So they're all depending on the needs of the individuals and how their success will look after graduation. Transition assessments will help determine the student's preferences, interests, needs, and strengths related to all of those 3 areas: the independent living, education and training, and employment. And also, transition activities should be implemented by team members for each of these areas each year. I do have a visual later on in the presentation that shows it's section 5 of the IEP, so pre-14 years old, that section is kind of null and void. You don't really click on it. You don't really fill that out in the IEP, but after 14, that's when the transition plan is implemented. So I can show that to you if anybody's interested in seeing what that looks like. We did find a really nice visual through Ocali that shows that transition planning isn't just one time, one thing and you're done. It's kind of an ongoing process that includes so many different factors that play a role, and it's very fluid. It's a very fluid process that transition providers, that parents and individuals play a very big role in, you know, implementing all of these different things. So this just kind of shows that it's ever moving. It's not just one plan and you're done. It can change from year to year, which is really, really great as the student grows and develops. So that's a really nice visual that we thought we'd kind of throw in there about transition planning. And also the IEP team, along with staff from supporting agencies, are able to talk through community resources and program options so that students are best prepared for the transition. So it's not only the individual and their IEP team, it's multiple community members and the different agencies, including the Lake County Board, that help support your student through the transition process. So that brings us to our next slide, and who's at the table. So here we are at the IEP meeting, and there's lots of different people that are here, and now we're going to break down who's involved in the IEP transition process. So first and foremost is our student. So the student communicates preferences, interests, strengths, and areas of need, types of support, and how they're progressing through their school, through their curriculum. And they participate actively in their discussions and decisions, planning for different activities, and developing their IEP. Especially with the transition process, we encourage students to advocate for themselves and what they envision their future to look like and how they want to make those steps for post-graduation. So we really encourage those students at age 14, even before then as well, but to start being an active participant in the IEP process. So they're number one at our table, the students. And then of course, the parents and guardians. So they are there to support the students, provide information about the strengths and interests, needs of the students as well, those independent living skills and those areas that they need a little bit extra supports in. The parents are also actively engaged as partners in planning, discussions, and decision-making. They will participate in making referrals to those adult service agencies and also training programs. And they will provide opportunities for the child to practice adult roles and responsibilities. My background is education, so I encourage families to start having individuals practice those daily living skills and independent living skills in the home setting, as well as practicing those in the school setting to generalize their skills and set them up for a little bit more independence for the future. So that's kind of the role that we want to collaborate, provide activities and ideas for families to do this, not only with their child at home, but encouraging staff members as well at school to do those activities to increase that youngsters' independence. As well at the table is the intervention specialist. So we know a lot about the intervention specialist. They've probably been involved in our child's life for quite some time, but they have taken on a new role now that the student is 14 and over, the transition age. They start identifying the student's PINs, so their preferences, interests, needs, and skills in the area of employability, daily living skills, education and training. So they identify those goals and those areas that the students have or areas that they need to increase some skills in. And they also suggest courses of study and educational experiences for the individual, identify personnel from school and related service agencies and community agencies that can assist in that transition. Lots of different things that these intervention specialists do, link students and parents to both school services and supports, and be that coordinator for people and agencies and programs for the individual, along with monitoring the student's progress. Another person at our table is our general education teacher. They assist the student in identifying those post-secondary goals, assist in planning the courses of study for the general curriculum, identify and provide modifications and implement those accommodations in the gen ed setting. And they monitor the students' progress as well. Another person on our table for the IEP team is our district representative or the principal. They provide support for the special education and general education staff. They provide information about programs for the school and the community, and also programs that are that would line up with the vision for the individual. So including assistive technology, accommodations, and different supports. That's the role of the district representative or the principal. The next person is the Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities. Did you want me to just review this and then? Okay. So this is an agency that provides information about services and eligibility criteria for those who are on the path to employment. They assist in identification of employment services. They authorize services, for example, summer youth work experiences, pre-employment training, community-based work, and assessments. So I think Julie might come back up and talk a little bit more about Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities. Yes, and she works directly.
So any student that is on the path to employment or even questioning if they're on the path to employment, we want to bring OOD, or Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities, to the table to help us make decisions on is work competitive integrated employment going to be appropriate for this particular student. When we say competitive integrated employment, that means working alongside typical individuals, not all individuals with disabilities, and they're earning a wage, at least a minimum wage, or comparable to those that they're working alongside. So we bring them to the table because their sole role for the state is to help individuals who have barriers to work find work. So individuals with disabilities fall into that category. We also think about veterans who are coming back from being deployed. They might have barriers to work. They work with them closely as well. So we want to bring them to the table because through those assessments and the experiences and the pre-ETS courses, we can get some good information about if the student is ready or even interested in this competitive employment, okay? If not, we make other decisions about what kinds of programming they should do once they leave school. But there's a variety of services, and just like on an IEP, they're going to have an employment plan, and we write services into that plan that help us make good decisions along the way. So not all employment plans look the same. So there's a partnership between the State Board of Developmental Disabilities, DODD, and OOD, and it's called Employment First. And it's that idea that we want to assume competitive employment for all individuals, and then what do we need to get those individuals there? Our county has set it as a priority, and they have a position of employment navigator. So I work with transition age youth, but I also work with any of our eligible individuals all through adulthood. So we could have someone who has been home. I have so many referrals because they've been home due to COVID, you can imagine. And now they're interested in getting out and getting back to work or finding their first job. They could be at a day program and they think, you know what, I have more independent skills now. I would like to see if I could work a small part-time job. So I get looped into that team, and we partner with Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities to work through the services to get them ready for a job, find a job, and then be successful on that job. Okay, so there's other supports at the table. Am I going to keep going, or is this you?
It doesn't matter.
Okay, go ahead.
There is a question. Maybe we can get to the question.
Okay, oh, go ahead.
Oh,
is it about OOD?
Yeah, it's about OOD.
Okay.
With a student who's 14 and all services are in place, the IEP, waiver, etc., who loops in OOD? The school?
Okay, typically I have found that that's the comfort level of the school. School staff would like to do that initial referral. But let's just have that conversation, with the IEP team. So that conversation does start with the IEP team. So if it's your intervention specialist that you go to, or your district rep, maybe you have the relationship with the principal, whoever that might be, let's just open up that conversation. And, but typically I have found school age students, the district is the most comfortable doing that referral. The referral is a simple one-page application. It just is opening that door to have a counselor assigned, so another case manager, but a case manager from that agency that will kind of lead the plan. But typically the referrals are coming from the school district. Okay.
Thank you. That answered your question. We had a question in the chat. All right. So some other support people who are at the table for the IEP meeting, who may have also been involved for quite some time for our youngsters, are our speech therapist, occupational therapist, maybe a guidance counselor, a vision specialist, all of those support staff that the child may work with at the school. So they will be part of the IEP team as well. It could also be a provider through OOD, a vendor, just as Juliet spoke to, or it could also be Julie herself, our employment navigator for the SSA department. They could be involved in this transition process as well. So just seeing and identifying what the individual's goals are for their future, the IEP team will come together and we will kind of use all of our resources, coordinate them, put them all together and see who the appropriate people are to fit in with our IEP team.
I'm going to stand here just so
yeah.
I'm on the screen. But many of our students have ideas of going on to post-secondary and things like that. So we oftentimes loop in the guidance counselor. Not all IEP teams have a guidance counselor sitting there. But if that's the path for the student, then we want to make sure that the right team members are sitting around the table.
This also could be anybody that the individual or the family gives permission to be at the IEP meeting as well. An advocate, a family member, or neighbor who would want to support the individual. So those people might be at the table as well. Oh, those in the here's another one.
Okay, so we talked about that all students through the transition plan, the transition age, are considered to be competitively employable. Slow down. But so many factors come into play. Is the student really ready? What kinds of independent skills do we have to develop? But it's just so important to have the right people around the table. And that's really where we keep hearing from families. Who are all these people around the table and what is their role? One of the roles of employment navigation, OOD, is to help make good decisions about employment. Doesn't mean only if we think employment is the for sure path, we should have them around the table. They should be sitting around the table to help make good decisions, even if you decide that that's not the path. We want to kind of weed that out as a possibility. And then following graduation, it might be possible that at the point of graduation, that individual is not ready to work at that point. And Jeremy is shaking his head because that's where we've come with a couple of his students. That does not mean that 6 months, 6 years down the line, I wouldn't get looped back onto the team because that's when they're ready. We can think about many of our typical children that weren't quite ready for the next step just because they got a diploma from high school. So timing is variable and we can meet their needs at any point. Okay, so what is my role? I can sit at those meetings with you, help me make those good decisions, assist with bringing those resources to the table. We have built a really strong relationship with OOD. We've gotten to know the counselors and their styles and what's necessary to really get those cases to move forward. And that's our role, that we're coming to not muddy the works, but we're coming to kind of smooth the waters and help processes move smoothly, help you understand why everybody's at the table and what all these requirements are, because it can be confusing. So let us be the ones that do it every day and help you to understand and make sense of it. So that is me. So how do you receive the services? You just ask. You say to your IEP team, my loved one is connected with the Lake County Board. I want to make sure that we have a transition specialist at the table, and I think we want to consider employment. Get at least one of us to the table, and then we communicate. We literally sit next to each other. So we shout through that cubicle wall and just say, I was at an IEP team meeting today, and we're talking about employment, or is employment going to be appropriate? I'd like you to come to the next meeting, or I'd like you to call the family. That's the conversations we're having. Or I'm sitting at the meeting and I'm saying, what, for the last 2 years, we were thinking that competitive employment was going to be feasible. and it doesn't seem like they're going to be ready when graduation comes, I think we're looking at different kinds of services upon graduation. I'd like you to, one of you to come to the next meeting. So just reach out to one of us. Okay, this is a visual recreated through a project with Ocali, which is a resource through the state for individuals with disabilities. But it's to help you understand who's at the table and when. So purple is the services that an individual would receive through the Lake County Board of Developmental Disabilities. Blue are the services that someone might receive through Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities. And as you can see, smack in the middle, that's a blended purple and blue, because it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Many of our individuals are tapped into OOD, are receiving services, are on the path, and they're going to find themselves a little part-time job, but that doesn't fill their whole week. So we are also going down the path of tapping into the services that they can get through the Lake County Board, potentially getting a waiver because they've identified a need, and then they're going to use those waiver services to have adult day support, or some services come into their home, or they're going to have some vocational training, whatever it might be. At the top, we put those arrows going left and right to illustrate the fact that it is not just like the Ocali figure 8, you could be anywhere on that path and it's never ending. This means that you can go back and forth at different points in your life. So someone might be, for whatever reason, completely comfortable in doing an adult day support, which is community access, but really more social activities. But then all of a sudden they, again, have created or developed some of their more independent skills, and they want to try working in the community. And we can move along the continuum and tap into supports that would help them get out into the community. Or they're in the community and they say, this is just too much for me for whatever's going on in my life. And we swing back the other way and we say, we're going to put some waiver services into place, and we're going to, look at some of those opportunities for you. The yellow in the middle is the path to employment through OOD, and your team might talk about that. Where is your child on the path to employment? And a 4 being that they don't even know about work, and all the way to a 1, I'm excited to get to work and I want to be in the community, and 2 and 3 somewhere in the middle. I want to know more about work. I have a little part-time job, but I'd like to have a better job. That's what that continuum is there in the middle. And you might hear that.
Can you get OOD services in a part-time job, say 8 hours, and then want to work the other part? Could you have the day service also working with both
Yes.
groups? And is there an age that could start?
You cannot tap into any of the waiver services to get the day services until you have taken your high school diploma and you've crossed that bridge into adult services. So student age students that are still receiving school age services, if I word it that way. If you're still receiving school age services, you are not eligible to tap into adult services, which is your day programming and things like that. So OOD can start while they're still in school. So that is a difference. There are some individuals though that have waivers that are medically based potentially, but they're not receiving the day service or the vocational. They're receiving maybe nursing, or would there be another?
Vocational from both.
Yes, not until they leave school. Okay, but then yes, absolutely. But you must decide to take the diploma, and we'll talk about that a little bit of, that making that decision of when is it appropriate that I take my diploma, because you meet the academic requirement, and then by law, a student can stay in school until they're 22. It's an IEP team decision, and those are some factors. Would they get greater benefit from leaving school services and tapping into adult services? Not many times, but sometimes that might be the case. Or do we want them to stay in school services and maximize all those opportunities and then move into adult services? Because adult services last for a really long time after that. But
The question about
okay.
path, what do supports look like in path 2? Are they intensive ongoing supports?
Well, it depends. They're all individualized. So if someone's on the path 2, that's that I would like a job, I would like to know, maybe have a better job, we would design something, maybe an assessment where they go out and have a work trial. They could get into potentially at school age, you can do non-permanent job development. Like all of us had, you know, part-time jobs when we were in high school to learn how to be an employee, really. If you just break down why I worked at a gas dock and I worked at the Gap and I worked, you know, all these places is because I was learning how to be an employee. Yeah, the money was nice and all of that because I was a teenager, but those are the kinds of jobs that we can help some of our youth get through OOD as well. That's called non-permanent job development. So did I address? I think that.
What the supports look like.
Yeah, so it's all individualized. Again, bring it to your team. And if your IEP team, so really, you know, for all the years up until 14, it was just your school team. That's who was sitting at the table, unless you invited someone, unless there was a specialist. But if we're talking about a vocational discussion or services, adult services, you might have to encourage your school team to bring those outside agencies to the table. By law, they should be asking outside agencies to come to the table who is appropriate for your student. But if not, just encourage by asking and saying, I would like a representative from this agency or other to the table.
Are the supports customized and individualized?
Absolutely, yeah. So just like an IEP, an employment plan is written specifically to what that student is seeking or what we need to learn to make good decisions about employment. I think that's something that gets missed, that we can do trials and career exploration and things like that to gain more information to help the team make a good decision or the student know more about, you know what, I went to that job site for a week, I would not want to go back, or I loved this component of it, I know I want to do more of that part of the job. So we can use OOD services as gathering information as well. This screenshot here is from the OOD website, and we talked about someone that could be sitting at the table. So if we have your OOD counselor there and your plan is being written and you're going to tap into a service for your student, just like Board of DD, we don't actually, OOD and DD we don't provide the service. We allocate the funds for providers who provide the service. So to have a provider or a vendor, they could be referred to, this is kind of how you make a decision about picking that vendor who's then going to carry out the service. So if we write a work adjustment or a summer youth work experience or a career exploration into the plan, the employment plan, then a provider is going to carry out that work. And that's, again, my job. I've gotten to know the providers and what their strengths are. You know, we have some that are really great at career exploration, others, the summer youth is a strength, whatever it might be. Let me be that information for you and help you to narrow down, maybe even do some provider interviews so that you're picking a good provider that's a good match for your student. So there's just, how do you be prepared to talk about yourself, because the provider is going to want to know about you, and then what might you ask? How are you going to help me find a job? How often will we talk while I'm receiving services? Those kinds of things. This is just a tool, a snapshot of a tool on their website on how you go about picking a provider.
I got a question.
Yes.
So the provider is someone that actually helps with that employment navigation?
They help to carry out the services that are approved in the employment plan. So there's an individualized plan for employment, an IPE, just like we need more, you know, initials, but another acronym, but that's your plan for employment. So if we say it's summer youth.
Is that interviewing? Is that job coach?
So those, yes, those are all job seeking skills or job development. Those kind of fall under a category.
Mm-hmm.
And then yes, we would pick a provider, and that provider then typically when we get into the adult world, they meet about once a week.
Okay.
To develop that resume, practice interviewing, start looking online for what jobs are in the area.
Okay.
You're gonna, to have a plan for employment, you kind of have to have a job goal.
Mm-hmm.
That can change. That's just a shot in the dark at the beginning, just like any of us. What do I want to do? I'm not sure. Let's say retail, or let's say stocking, let's say working with animals, whatever it might be. We start there, but then all these things that you do with through your OOD plan, your plan for employment, is to help make good decisions. Is that really still a good job goal? And then all the services that are approved are to help you land a job and keep that job in that area. Okay. Anything else online? Okay. Okay. Transitions at the table.
All right.
Finally.
At the table, hopefully one of us, right? So, which is why we're all here today, so that we can let you know that we'd like to be invited to those meetings. So oftentimes the schools, that's what we'll start with, the release of information, so that we can communicate with the schools so they can invite us to those meetings. So we're going to probably put a plug in today to ensure that we have updated releases of information from everybody so that we can get those invitations. Some districts we work very closely with, and we're getting lots of good invitations and stuff like that. Some schools we might not have a lot of communication with, depending on that particular setting. So you may need to be that voice for us to let us know that a meeting's coming up, and invite us so that we can come. So and again, those are going to start as early as 14 years old, so that we want to be able to be a part of that, so that we start working on what's the plan for life after school. And I know what we used to say a lot is, well, what are we going to do when that school bus stops coming? And I think a lot of us figured that out a little bit throughout the pandemic, because the buses really did stop, So I think that, yeah, as we started to see that, that's really does happen. So, but eventually, we're going to start working towards that plan, and whether that's going to be at 18 or 22 or somewhere in between there. So this is just some generalizations. Again, we participate in the IEP meeting. We know that it's a difficult shift into adulthood, for anyone, really, let alone somebody who has some additional needs. So we want to be able to help with that process. And so this has our, again, we have our stuff in here, and then Julie is going to do that kickoff with our kids when they're 14 years old to 15 to start working on that. So we're going to want to be able to start looking at, providing linkage to adult services, help with referrals and things in the community. So this is, there's a lot of different things that are going to happen around that time. I think some of the big ones that we start talking about and we are asked some questions about are things like guardianship, for instance. So we have, and this is a lot of this information that you have, the handouts. This is also on our website, and these will be live links. So if you want to learn more about Social Security or Medicaid, because a lot of times when our children become 18, we want to start the application process for those benefits. So those are something that you can, use these as live links and to be able to use that. Another thing that we talk about, I know we talk a lot about the potential for guardianship. The other thing that we really want to start to incorporate is, earlier too, is supportive decision making. So it may not be that guardianship is a role that you need to necessarily take for your child. Maybe there is additional supports that we can offer as parents and as teams to be able to help make decisions. And then knowing that when your child may be 14 and we think, oh, that's a long way off, that's going to come. And if we want to start preparing them to be good decision makers and how to do that and how to support them with that. So there are some tools and resources where we really find that more often now we're kind of shifting away from needing to go directly to a guardianship role, and we may be able to do other things. So certainly guardianship is appropriate, and there are resources available for that. But then regardless, I think that everybody needs to be able to have their own voice heard and be able to make decisions as best they can. And this sort of breaks down, again, I think we've talked about this a little bit. That Julie's going to be working with the 14 to 15-year-olds. And then we have, again, with the path to employment afterwards. So they could be working with Julie when they're 70, if they decide, they're done with their retirement. And then the 16 to 22-year-olds. And we sort of breaking it down into different districts. So I'm working with Mentor schools and cares and Willoughby Eastlake schools, and Nicole's going to be working with Fairport, Harbor, Kirtland, Madison, Paynesville, Perry, Riverside, including Rave, Whitcliffe, and Broadmoor School. So but we all work together. As Julie's mentioned before, we all sit very close together. Any one of us is going to help point you in the right direction. We may come to each other's meetings, cover for each other, things like that. So any one of us are truly able to help you. But this kind of gives you an idea, who you might want to target and make sure you get cards on your way out. So this is a timeline to kind of just start thinking about some of the things that as your child gets older, some of the things you might want to start giving some consideration to. And so, we had already talked a little bit about the different evaluations that need to be completed, the OEDI and the COEDI. So they're presumed to be eligible after 6 until they're 16. You know, so once we get that, and then we'll have until they're 16, and then we have to go through that process again. Once you complete that process at 16, you don't have to go back through that again. So that's, you know, part of their adult. And we see some of the other things that accessing the DD services that that a lot of families do benefit from is, and again, this is another form that's online that'll have links to it. You know, so if you wanted to learn more about that, you can go on the website, click on these different links, and it'll take you directly to that. Do you guys have what that?
There's a full size.
Okay.
Because the slide is tiny. There's a full size one in your folder. Yeah.
There you go. Thank you. Thank you.
On the screen, I'm like,
Yeah.
I can't really see it.
Yeah, some of these don't necessarily pull out very well. So at any rate, you'll see family support services. I think that's something that a lot of families do gain access to that's very helpful. Our recreation department, which we'll put a plug in for again before we leave today. Obviously, it's transition services that we're able to offer you. And then, so we start looking at that path and the different sort of things that we want to start moving towards as our, you know, children start to become older and get closer to graduation, and maybe that would be OOD and some of the other stuff. So this is just kind of a visual to give us something, another tool kind of along the same lines as this checklist. So again, you're thinking of that age group. So we have that 14, you know, through 21 going into 22. Thinking about some of the things if we're, you know, wanting to tick these things off, you know, what are the things we need to start looking forward to? What are the things that I want to get completed? And this is just, again, another, that could be used as a tool or visual to be able to start thinking about the things. And again, this would be something as well that you could use these links to get yourself directly there. We find that there are some things that are just very helpful as, you know, thinking about maybe setting up a bank account for your student, thinking about getting that state ID, things like that, you know, maybe we don't think about until the time arrives and then they need it to start a job. And then, now we've got to, you know, try and figure that out, you know, or spend our whole Saturday at the BMB or whatever. So, yeah, so there's different things that we can just start to give consideration to. I think that Lake training, you know, if that's going to be something that, you know, your student is going to be able to access, beginning to do that. You know, we don't need to wait until that need presents itself. We can start thinking about that, planning for that a little bit, you know, earlier and figure out how those resources are going to work. Another one that we talk about too is maybe, you know, a cell phone. You know, maybe not all students at this point maybe have their own cell phone. How do we start to think about, you know, if they're going to be in that adult world, what is, I'm gonna get somebody in trouble, I think. Yeah, what just starting to give consideration to those, you know, adult kind of life, you know, and what we would need to be thinking about. So there's a lot of stuff, and again, these are the same types of things that are listed on the other form as well. Stable accounts, if you need some assistance, you know, to become Medicaid eligible or to maintain that eligibility. You know, some families do choose to use those resources for their funds. So, and then we talked about life after high school, that post-graduation. And then we'll start using all kinds of new terminology. So this is our little cheat sheet on some of the terms that we're going to start using. Adult day support. So when we start referring to like adult day support, these are programs that are primarily rec and leisure based, you know, and then vocational habilitation. So we'll have some programs that might just be all sort of rec leisure. Some of them may have a vocational component to them. So they may be a blend. So there's some different things. And then there's also opportunities through waiver services to be able to access individual employment support and things like that. We talked quite a bit about OOD earlier. They're another funding source that's available. So we want to be able to utilize that. They're considered more of a short-term resource. So they're going to be able to help and stay a part of that team until that individual, if they are on the path to employment, to be able to have their, gain their job, stay there, do some retention, be able to stay there with them through, you know, 90 days or so of employment. After that, hopefully we have that we're lined up with waiver services, and the waiver services can continue then to move forward with a lot of these other things, whether it's career planning, individual employment options, and things like that. So this handout that you should all have on the back side of that, which we don't have here in the presentation, it's a lot of our different adult day support programs, and they're broken down by region. So you get just a general idea. I think a lot of it is, as you start to give consideration to programs, what most of us do is just realize like, okay, well, what's in our neighborhood? You know, we maybe don't even realize that there are some programs that may be very nearby. So my role and Nicole's role would be to help you to learn about those programs that are out there. Right now, we've been doing a lot of Zoom meetings, you know, to do sort of meet and greets with adult day service providers. As the world is opening up a little bit, we've been able to go out and do some in-person tours and things like that. So we can just begin to learn about what is out there, what's available, because you have choice, you know. So as you start to walk towards that process, you're learning, maybe there's still another year of school left, you know, maybe there's 2 years, but maybe start to figure out what's out there, what's available, what's going to be a good match. You know, so whether it's something that's more of the rec leisure sort of thing, or again, you're able to go out and see these places and make a decision about whether or not this is going to be a good setting for yourself or for your loved one. And I tell people a lot, it's like kind of preparing for college. You know, you don't just wait until the day that school ends and then decide to start exploring, you know, adult day service programs. So it's something that you plan for. You go out and you take visits like you would at a college. You know, you go and have a look, and you can get a sense of what is life like in a day of this particular program, for instance. So that, again, it's, sure.
Will it have to just be in Lake County? Like, what if we found a day program in another county?
Yeah, so yeah, that's a good question. Their waiver is able to cross county lines. So it's all throughout the state in Ohio. So most people, if they live, you know, maybe very near a county line, that's why we sort of broke that up, because some people may go into Geauga County, they live very near there, or maybe they chose to drive that extra little bit because that program was just such a great fit for them, you know. There is now medical transportation services. The non-medical transportation services is basically the rides to and from these adult day service programs. Oftentimes the providers themselves are able to offer that. So that is part of that sort of package, so to speak. So we don't have to think about, you know, it's not going to be a school bus or whatever. It's typically going to be a van or something like that, you know. Not all the programs have that, but there are a number of private non-medical transportation providers, you know, so that would be something that it becomes a little more challenging if it's further physically away from your home to be able to do that, but we can get creative, and sometimes we're able to still figure that out. But yeah, so you can absolutely cross county lines and be able to utilize those services.
So I have another question. So so do you have to choose either or? So like, say I want them to work, but I do want them to go to a daycare facility like one day out of the week just for the socialization.
Right.
So can they do both?
Absolutely. Yeah. So and this is kind of leads to, you're just leaning right into this. So each adult day service program, because they're privately run, it would be up to each program to determine whether or not and what degree they're able to offer like a part-time schedule. You know, some of them have a great deal of flexibility. Some of them, maybe from their business model, need to be able to know that you're going to be there 5 days a week, you know? And so it really depends. If you have that question specifically, as you're sort of doing your tours and interviews and meet and greets, that would be something to throw out there. You know, is it okay? Is a part-time schedule going to work out? You know, because there could be, you know, maybe by the time we're getting ready to exit education, we have a job, you know, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and that's working out great. We're kind of feeling real comfortable with that just part-time sort of position, but we were just in school 5 days a week, you know, we want to be able to have a meaningful day, a meaningful week. So to be able to, you know, have those additional supports, to do those fun things and hang out with our peers and go out and do things. So yeah, that's definitely something that we can do. So not all of those things are not necessarily waiver supports. And the other thing that we wanted to point out on this particular slide, there's a variety of different things that are going to be available to all of us in our community. So it's really beginning early to find out like who our people are, you know, what are the things that are interests, what do we like to do outside of just, you know, so many of us, maybe we work Monday through Friday, but we do things, you know, with certain groups in the evening. Maybe you like photography, maybe you're, you know, someone who likes to hit the library or movie. So there's so many different things that people can volunteer. So there's lots of different things that we can sort of start to tap into and think about what is going to make a meaningful day and something for somebody. So this is one way to be able to do this. This tool, again, this is a very price small. I don't know if you guys have a handout for this or not, but at any rate, this is, some of you may be familiar with Charting the Life course. And it's a tool that we use to assess somebody, what types of supports do they have? And then, so we're again, trying to find that, what is that good life? You know, what are the things that somebody, and it's not all waiver supports. It's not all necessarily things that are tied to eligibility. So if you look at you know, the supports that are around. So one of them, and I know this is probably very difficult for you to read, but one of them is listing about the personal strengths of that individual themselves. Maybe there's some technology that's part of that support, you know, perhaps there's things within our own communities that are additional supports, and relationships, you know, and there's, you know, a lot of maybe people and friends and community. And then there's the eligibility specific things that we've been talking about that are additional supports as well. So, you know, we really start to walk through this process to just find out how can we have this more inclusive quality life where we're doing a lot of these different things. And so this is a representation of, this would just be the one on your left where you're just seeing that one green block. That is just, that's just going to day program, and then you're with mom and dad on the weekend, you know, so this doesn't look like a lot of variety is going on, you know. And then I think this is closer to what you're talking about, like, okay, well, maybe we're working a few days a week, or we have something that's sort of that blended model, you know. And the case of this particular individual that they're referencing, it's maybe they're volunteering somewhere twice a week, you know, and then they have some alone time, like each time their parent goes for a walk, you know, they're starting to access alone time and doing some different things to just show a variety of different ways that you can access services, ways that you can volunteer, things that you're doing with friends, you know, so it's just having something that could be more integrated. So keeping it all straight. So you guys, you got all this stuff, right? Yeah. So cheat sheets, right? So who wants cheat sheets for all this stuff? So we think there are some actually nice tools available to sort of help remind us about who all these people are at the table. What's their role? One of them, it's a very comprehensive one, the agency navigation tool, which I think we have a slide on. And then some other transition contacts and things like that. So this one, this is really breaking down, again, who's at the table, and it's, you know, how do you become eligible for this? What are the types of services? So what are each one of those people, you know, doing, and what's their role? Because it's hard to know. Who do I ask? And I think that was one of our questions. I don't know who to pose this question to right now.
Throw it out in the middle of the table. Somebody's gonna answer it. Yeah.
So kind of understanding what the different roles are. So this particular agency tool was developed through Employment First. So that's something that we can certainly send over to you if you have some more interest in that. It's a very comprehensive tool that gives a lot of information. So about jobs and family services, Social Security, DODD, things like that. And then, you know, maybe it's just having a breakdown like something like this. It just gives you, okay, well, these are the different people. These are my contacts. You know, this is the person I contact for, you know, for instance, for school, the school programs, OOD, DODD, you know, so we could have something, you know, this is, again, just another tool. And then as our students, you know, start to gain some independence and need to know who's on their team, right? This, we're talking about transitioning into adulthood. Maybe somebody prefers to use this, something, you know, along these lines that has maybe some visuals based on, you know, their needs for reading, but this is just another representation. I know a lot of us, you know, we're really, you know, maybe we don't use our address book anymore like we used to. Everything's in our cell phones these days, but it is kind of nice to have that breakdown. And if we can have our students like to learn some of their own, you know, who's on my team and who can help me? Who do I pose this question to? You know, even from that level. So, and another who's who, another little cheat sheet, you know. Again, for the county board, it'll be waivers, needs assessments, family support services or FSS, transition employment navigation. And we've talked again about opportunities for Ohioans with disabilities. So all contact information available here, jobs and family services, probate court, Social Security Administration, the Adams Board. And again, with these handouts, and when you go to our website, you'll be able to just click on those links and go directly to the websites for each one of them. And on to the fun stuff. So one of the other things that we're really happy about is, you know, our recreation department. I tell everybody they're the coolest kids in the agency. They really, you know, they are doing all the fun stuff. So we want to hang out with them as often as we can. And we've really talked about recently how we can work on having things that are more specific for our transition age youth, you know, because we provide at the county board services to individuals on a whole spectrum of ages, you know, that could be 3 or 93, you know? So really trying to find some activities that are going to be a little bit more specific, and then help parents and families and the individuals begin to learn our recreation staff. So we're having an event. So this is sort of like, you know, letting you guys know about that. This flyer hasn't even gone out yet. So this is just breaking news just now, you know? So save the date, September 15th, and that will be right here on campus. I don't know if any of you are familiar with where the rec department is, but you would just continue down this road and up the hill, you know, along there. So at any rate, so this is a bonfire cookout that we're all looking forward to very much, that, you know, is specifically for transition students and their families to come and meet the staff and learn a little bit more about that. So we're definitely looking forward to that. So does anybody else have any questions? Have we covered the burning questions that you came here today with?
Just real quick, what would happen if, I know you can transition your services to another, like different counties, but what if you yourself were ever to move to a different county? How would that work?
Yeah, then we would transfer that case to that county.
So it's not like you have to start the process all over again, or?
No, well, each county has the ability to redetermine eligibility.
Okay.
So they could decide for themselves to do, you know, that OEDI again, you know, because they have that right to be able to redetermine eligibility. But yeah, so if you move, you know, you could just start services with that board, wherever that happened to be. Yeah. So yeah, and we would just help to collaborate with you on that, and determine like what date, you know, we would actually shift that over, and we all work together. I mean, it's just something that does happen frequently. So yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean that your child's placement will change or anything, or depends on the county, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Well, again, because if the waiver services can cross county lines. So say, you know, you chose to participate in a program in Cuyahoga County, and then you ended up moving there, you know, you could continue to participate, you know, in that county, because it's same for them. You know, it's like you can move throughout the county and be able to still have those supports. So you would they would be administering those waiver services, authorizing those services through that particular county board. So it would just be us sort of handing the baton to them deciding to redetermine eligibility, and then they would be the author of the plan moving forward and authorize the services and stuff like that. So yeah, of course.
Any online questions, Nicole?
No.
So far? I have a weird question, and I guess I'm probably mixing up terminology, but where does this waiver services fall in place? Because it used to be you were on a waiting list, and you know, we got a letter that was updated every year to be on the waiting list. Is this waiver services, is that everything that we've been talking about with having the transition support team and employment team that falls under that, or is
that's a good question? Yeah.
Different?
So the question, I don't know if everyone that's listening can hear that, but we're wondering, so where does the waiver fit into all this, really? Is that sort of, yeah, okay. So while the student is typically in school, oftentimes you wouldn't need a waiver service. So I'm not sure if I went over that in detail enough when we got to that point. So so the services, if you're eligible for county board services, you would be able to tap into the services that we talked about, you know, employment navigation, transition services, things like that. You'd be able to participate in our recreation events. You know, you would be able to do all those things. Those are not waiver services, so you don't need a waiver for that. The adult day support programs.
Eligible. So that's the part that I talked about.
Right.
Eligibility is the key.
Yeah.
To tap into those services.
Yeah, but I think that I did sort of skip over the other piece, which is, you know, when we're looking at those services, adult day service programs, those are simply too costly usually for families to pay out of pocket for that. So families are going to look for a waiver to pay for it. Those are waiver providers. So that adult day service flyer that you have, that two-sided, those are all waiver providers that are going to be able to provide those services. Right. So that's sort of when that comes in place. So there was previously that wait list, as you had mentioned, and things are now based on needs assessment. So the fortunate part is that we can identify needs, you know, that are happening within your family. Oftentimes it's simply exiting education is the need, you know, where they were being provided, you know, school services, and now that's going to be going away. We usually know when that's going to happen, you know, and we're able to identify that need 12 months out. So if you know, because not everyone's going to stay till their 22nd birthday. Maybe they're going to stay close to that. Maybe they're going to turn 22 in December, so maybe they're not going to return to school for those couple months. You know, maybe they're just going to go ahead and wrap it up at the end of the previous school year. There's all kinds of different situations, you know. So when we get closer as IEP team to determining when we're going to exit school services, you know, we'll identify and sort of queue you up to get that needs assessment completed, you know. And again, the need identified in that case would be exiting education. Now, there could be other needs that are occurring within your family. So if something does come up, you know, and you have a specific need based on your child's disability, something that's happening within the home, you know, loss of a caregiver, things like that, if things do come up, those are other needs. You know, we don't have to have like a 12-month notice on that, you know, because life happens, right? So there's different types of needs, something that's happening like right now or something that we're going to project that we know is coming up, you know. So we're going to hopefully be aware of that. And then we're going to make sure that we're going to get you connected. Or, you know, I tell some people like, okay, go mark your calendar for your child's 21st birthday, because we know within a year, you know, that the school is going to be done for them. So then we would start looking at that needs assessment. The needs assessment would, once that's completed, they would determine whether or not a waiver would be needed. And then as a county board, they would determine, you know, when that would be able to be allocated. So then that's sort of going to be, there's another, you know, group of people that would be able to determine that for you. So we can definitely help you to get that needs assessment completed. And then that moves on to that waiver, which is the funding to pay for adult day services, for those waiver services, the transportation piece. There's also additional services available through waivers like homemaker personal care and things like that. So
I'm going to step here just so
Sure.
they can see. So thank you for asking that question. And we were asked to pare this down to transition and employment, but that eligibility and understanding how you tap into waiver services is so important. So stop back. We'll do another presentation on how that's usually our whole song and dance, is the whole, all the way from how I became eligible to the wait list to then I can receive a waiver because I have a need. But we kind of carved this out without talking about that, and it's difficult to do. So thank you for asking that question.
It just needed the highlight to tie it in.
Yes.
So,
Thank you.
you know where
Yes,
you're going
perfect.
with it.
So thank you. It's like you're a plant. We'll pay you all later.
Jeremy has a question.
Or if you don't have a waiver, can you still visit the program?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of what I'm doing.
No,
So yeah, so I would hopefully be doing that with families. Maybe they're going to be on here. Yeah, maybe they're going to be a year from exiting, so they don't have that waiver queued up for them yet. Maybe they're not even ready to do that needs assessment yet because it's not quite 12 months out. That doesn't mean that we can't start planning that process. It doesn't mean that we can't start visiting programs, meeting them, because I think just as families, like we don't even know what we don't know about these adult day services. We've never been. Maybe you have no prior experience with any of that. Just beginning to learn a little bit. So after some time and go, oh, okay, I visited that one. I thought that one was great. This one's neat, but maybe not for my kid. So that's things that you could start doing. Absolutely. You do not need to have a waiver for that. In order to be a participant, unless you're going to private pay, yes, I would think you would definitely need a waiver then at that point. So, and then hopefully what we're doing then is, in this perfect world that I've seen this happen, and when it does happen, it's so lovely, we're able to help people to make sure that they're getting that needs assessment, working with the school IEP team to, to make a plan. Then we start touring these different places the parents identify within that, year. So that last year of school, that IEP team can now start supporting that new part of the team that's sort of coming on board, and then they're the experts. They have all this information. So we want to steal their ideas. So when they go out into the adult day service program, we don't have to start over. So they're already part of the team. We start to bring everybody together, and share information and things like that. And then that really does create such a smooth transition, So like I said, I've seen this happen. And the more that we start early, start exploring those programs, getting idea, and then we can use our whole team together to support that happening. So.
Okay, great. So real quick, again, our team, again, and we're going to quickly go to, oh boy. Okay, oh, there we go. So here's our website. We're very proud of this. The whole agency did a revamp on the website, and we took that opportunity to create this really great transition services page. So the link is in your handout, but again, all these resources, we are trying to fill this little section on this particular page with these handouts so you can look at them full size and use the links, as Brenda said. When you open them up, then these are hot links that take you to, for example, probate court or Social Security Administration or whatever it might be. in those different timelines and things like that. So as we create new resources for you, and we're trying to, you saw a couple of different timelines, and we apologize about that, but we also are trying to think about everyone's different learning styles and organization styles, and, throw one away, but, keep the one that makes sense to you. So that's why we presented in a variety of ways, but they're all going to be available here. So this is a website that you want to make sure you keep tapped into.
Is there information on Medicaid on this?
So on like Who's Who has Medicaid on it. So take, a couple of those checklists
Right.
and timelines have Medicaid. It'll take you right there.
Thank you.
Anything online?
Just a couple accolades saying thank you for the presentation.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. So, well, this was wonderful. We appreciate Jody Travers offering that we could do a family forum on this topic. And again, grab our cards. Our contact information is on what you received. And we are going to send you a few things in your email. And actually, those of you in the room don't get to go without signing that release of information. But we're going to send you the link to the PowerPoint and to the website. It's already up here. I think she put it somewhere. We're going to send you a survey, and we just want to know, maybe tonight you didn't think of the question, but put that answer, question in the survey for us, or did we hit it and we should take this on the road, whatever it might be, or we really missed the mark and it was too confusing and only talk about this section, whatever it might be. We want your feedback because we appreciate your attendance online and here tonight, but there are so many more families that we want to get this good information to, and we want to get better and better at it. So we appreciate that. So yeah, I think in your file, your folder, there's a release of information, and that release is so that we can talk to your school district openly, and talk with your school teams and tell them we know about you. We have been in having to wait to respond where districts are saying, I have this release signed and we'd like you to come to this IEP team meeting. We would like to say, hey, we know about this family. We'd like to join in.
Right.
Okay. So I think we're going to log off the Zoom.
I think
And
there was a few other things you wanted to mention that are in the packet.
well, thank you.
Yeah.
So there's a FSS application. So that is one thing. If your loved one is eligible, you can tap into. This is about $1,500 a year, and there's an explanation on what is how you go about qualifying. And if your child is over 18, they're qualifying on their own. So that's an important thing. And then on our website, I believe there's more information about what can be covered and things like that. There's recreation referral form. So we're hoping you come to that bonfire and just love it and you want to be referred to being able to access those services, or we want to do that already now, you can fill out this form. And it's obviously, you can see it's a fillable form, so we could email that to you if you would like. And then we have our the transition age campfire that we're talking about. And then they do have a liability. If they're not already someone who's tapping into rec services, we need this last form signed, which you can decide to do that night that you come. I think that's it. I think it's a wrap. Thank you. We took a little bit too much of your time, but we appreciate it.